Hello, my name is Paulina, and today I'm going to be discussing the classic pinup girl tattoo. And before I begin, I just want to give a little content warning as this video features a lot of depictions and images of women in their bodies, which are kind of exaggerated, and so I just wanted to state that before I got into the video. The term pinup originated in the 1890s when images of women were being used in advertisements. Pages of magazines and business cards could be pinned up and enjoyed. Joel Charest created the first pinup magazine, which included young women who were posed in a promiscuous way. The emphasis was on their body, so they had large breasts, uh, curvy bodies, and just elongated features that were not necessarily realistic. During World War II, the Varga Girl pinup was created by a man named Alberto Vargas. She had long legs, a narrow waist, and a sumptuous figure, and she was extremely popular amongst military men. It was seen as a morale booster, and she was put on airplanes, ships, and eventually even tattoos. When Marilyn Monroe came into the scene, she became a popular muse for pinup girls, and a lot of drawings and tattoos are based on her image and likeness, as well as other actresses during the time. During World War II, a lot of military men started getting American traditional tattoos, and one of the themes of these tattoos were pinup girls. They were often seen as a good luck charm or symbolized home and safety and optimism for the men who were often away for months without any contact with other women, especially sailors who were in boats for long periods of time. These images were not exclusive to tattoos. Like I said previously, they were a lot on airplanes or ships. People would put the designs on lighters and postcards, and it would just be images for them to look at and to remind them of home. There's not necessarily a known creator of the original pinup tattoo, as there were a lot of artists doing it at the time, but one of the most popular American traditional artists was a man named Sailor Jerry. He tattooed in Hawaii, and his actual name is Norman Collins. And he had a lot of popular images of the pinup girl, which still influence tattoo artists today. He created a lot of classic American traditional designs, but because he was on Hawaii and a lot of sailors during World War II stopped there, he ended up creating a lot of pinup tattoos for them. He's also notable for being one of the first tattoo artists to use single-use needles in an autoclave to sterilize them, because before that, they were often reused on different people, which is obviously a huge health hazard. He also created newer shades of ink, for example, purple ink, and he was a big influence on the American traditional community and created a lot of meaningful works. So now let's talk about the design of the pinup girl and how it's typically seen in tattoos. So this is an illustrative piece because it's a physical artwork. It's done on the skin, obviously, as a tattoo, and it's permanent. I've used the term American traditional a lot, and for those of you who do not know what that means, I'm kind of going to explain it here when I talk about the elements and principles of design. So, American traditional is a very specific style and it has a lot of rules within it. So, as far as line work, you'll see that there are very bold and thick lines. There's not a lot of thin lines, and that's due to during the time it was a lot faster to create just bold, thick lines than instead of doing small, tiny details. So, a lot of that is due to the timing of when these tattoos were created. Along with that, colors are very minimal and it's usually just bold, simple colors. So, you'll see a lot of red, a lot of blue and green, and like browns and just neutral colors. Another notable thing is that the skin is not fully covered in ink. Usually people leave a little bit of blank space for the skin tone, and that counts as like another color used in these tattoos. The reason for all of this was back in the day when they did tattoos, a lot of people would just come in, pick up a design on the wall, and then get it done very quickly. So they would have one artist do line work, one artist do shading, and one artist do coloring. And so it became a way to make it a lot faster and kind of make the design simpler while still creating a strong design that would last forever. And the shape obviously would be typically of a woman. It's not really any form to it because it's a 2D design on the skin. Sometimes they would be a little bit more 3D looking, but generally they were pretty two-dimensional, flat looking. And it also had idealized proportions and figures of the body. Now, as far as principles, proportion is probably the most important one, and that's because the pinup girl didn't have like normal female proportions. They were often really exaggerated, and it would be to create this like ideal American woman. So she often had long legs, big breasts. She was curvy but also thin. There's also contrast because it was done with bold black and then lighter colors like the skin to contrast with it. They would also use whites and browns, and it would create a good sense of contrast. And the emphasis is mostly just the figure of the woman. A lot of times they're in like seductive poses, and it really stands out. All right. So as far as features, a lot of these women, especially during the tattoos in the 1940s, were very similar to each other. They had a lot of basic things in common. For example, most of the women had makeup, like a light makeup look. They would often have like a 50s, 40s style hair with like curls and a shorter length. Parts of their body were often on display. A lot of them are wearing like short shorts or dresses where they have long legs. They're usually wearing heels. A lot of times, like their breasts can be exposed or you can be shown cleavage. Another important aspect was the clothing that these women wore. It often depended on the person who's actually getting the tattoo, but for example, sailors would get them with the traditional sailor uniform. Military people would have them wearing like camo and green shorts and whatnot. And so a lot of that was just inspired by what the person getting the tattoo was into at the time. And so that's why you can see the variation of outfits. A lot more modern ones, you can see like a football girl or a maid or things like that. And it kind of just changes depending on the times. More recent years, there have also been more alternative versions of the pinup girl. For example, instead of a girl, it's actually a man, or different body shapes, different body sizes, different skin colors, because obviously at the time, a lot of white men were getting it, so it was a lot of white women as well. They could be in different styles, like a more cartoony style, um, more modern clothing, more modern outfits, and a lot of times women can be seen with pinup girl tattoos and kind of appropriating it in their own way. So, like Rosie the Riveter, she's a very important person, and she's seen a lot more feminist type pinup tattoos. So, as far as semiotics, the first one is icon, which basically just represents whatever it is that it looks like. So, this can be seen with like the uniforms that the different women wore. So, maybe a man who was a sailor would have a pinup girl in a sailor uniform, and it would kind of be representing that he was a sailor without actually, showing him. It's just like a woman who's also wearing that kind of uniform. So for index, it shows what's being represented. So this would be seen by the different uniforms that the women would be wearing and the different types of things that they would hold or features about them, kind of indicate just about the man getting it and what they wanted to represent, maybe what it reminded them of. So for example, like home or the people they wanted to remember when they left. And for symbols, it can be interpreted differently by everyone. So it all kind of depends on the woman herself as a tattoo and what kind of clothes she's seen with and what kind of objects and the pose that she's in. It all just depends on the person, but it can represent a lot of different things like home and familiarity and other different things that people may want to commemorate. The pinup girl tattoo has an interesting history. Even though it was originally only being tattooed on white military men, it is now being reclaimed and rebranded. There are a lot of design possibilities. It's a way to honor a traditional style with new meaning. The pinup girl tattoo has stood the test of time, especially those created in the American traditional style. American traditional is known for its longevity because of the bold line work that will still look clean in 20 years. Though some people do not like it due to the objectification of women's bodies, more and more people are reclaiming the design to use for themselves, making it a powerful symbol for everyone. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope everyone could learn something new about the pinup girl tattoo.